Welcome to the Ask Ezra Intimacy Coaching Podcast, a peek behind the curtain of some of the most intimate conversations that people have with Ezra as an intimacy coach. Join us for a session already in progress.
Welcome back, Savannah, to the
Hi.
Ask Ezra Podcast.
Hey, how are you?
Good. I'm so happy to have you, and I'm so glad that you came back because I was in such rough shape last time we did an episode, and you were so patient with me, and here I am rested.
Fantastic. You're early. You're not only on time, but you're early.
So this episode, we are just going to focus not on your professional life and how many cool things you've done, but what's happening for you in your intimate life. I'd love to know.
Ooh. Where do I start? I think I probably should have you ask me questions. Would probably be better suited than my resume of sexual escapades.
As much fun as that might be.
It's pretty lame. It's pretty lame, I gotta tell you.
Let's start. Are you partnered currently?
I'm partner. I am with a cis woman for over 9 years. My relationship before that was 15 years. And then before that, I had a couple girlfriends. And before that, I was married. And then teenage years and all the dalliances we have during our teenage years. But always with genetic women. That is my go-to. So for anybody listening or watching this conversation, hey, but you're dressed as a woman. Doesn't it mean you like men? No, it does not. It doesn't mean I like men. What I do, and this is something that took me a long time to figure out, especially in the roaring 90s when I was going to Lucky Chang's in Manhattan and going to the drag clubs and seeing performances and saying, oh my God, these women are gorgeous and I am sexually attracted to these women. But my brain was telling me, oh, they're men, right? And in the 90s, I didn't have enough of a self-awareness to understand that you're not attracted to them because they're men. You're sexually attracted to them because they are epitomizing that feminine essence and presentation that you are already attracted to.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it took me years. We're talking decades to be like, it was like, because I never wanted to be gay, and just because I dressed up doesn't make me gay. But I was doing a lot of questioning, and I said, no, I'm not. But I couldn't understand that attraction still. So it took me until the 2000s to recognize that sexual attraction and romantic attraction are two wholly different things. Typically they inform each other, but it actually made complete sense to me then at that point to say, oh yeah, they're dressed as women and they're smoking and they're lit and they're on point and they are presenting with awe. So why wouldn't I be attracted to that? Because that's what I've been attracted to my whole entire life. So at that point, I was like, aha, it makes sense.
Okay. And also, I'd love to think that everybody listening has already listened to every single one of the Ask Ezra podcast episodes. But,
of course.
But in case they haven't, what is your gender presentation?
My gender presentation right now with you is female. I'm dressed as Savannah right now. But typically 80%, 85% of my life, I am a biological male. I present as a male. My pronouns are male centric, he, him. When I'm Savannah, it's she, her. I do not use they. For me, it'd be more of an androgyny play if I wanted that. So I don't feel that for myself, like any alternative pronouns other than he, she. So yeah, 90% of my life, 80% of my life is male centric. I go to work as Chuck. I go to work as a man. And then for special occasions and for the times I need to have my outlet, I present as a woman.
And I think you used the term dual gender in our last episode. Yeah, fantastic.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. And then are you monogamous?
I am.
Okay, fantastic.
I'm actually agnostic. Oh, wait, no, you're talking about sexual.
Yeah, that's hilarious. There might be a monogamous partner out there for me, right? That would be ignominious. I don't know. Yeah. There's something in there. There's a joke in there.
There's a joke in there.
It's not finished. But
yeah, we'll workshop it. Maybe by the end, we'll figure it all out.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe we can edit it back in so that it looks like I thought of it really quickly.
Awesome.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay. And so you have been with the same woman for 9 years.
Yes.
Would you say that your intimate life is everything that you would want? Or is there?
No, I would
Okay.
say no to that in all
Hmm.
honesty. In pretty much all of my relationships, not even just currently, but all my relationships, Savannah has never been a part of that equation.
Hmm.
You could even call it like a thruple. It's like where there's Chuck in the partner and there's Savannah and there's three people. And while it's the same person for me, because I embody the same intellect and emotion and spirit and soul, for a partner who's not geared that way, have a intimate relationship with me as a male is and has been wholly different than the intimate relationship with my partner and me as Savannah. So Savannah's really never been in the bedroom, so to speak, at least
Yeah.
maybe once or twice in all the relationships I've had, but it's never been that thing that my partners have loved and been like, ooh, bring her in. I love playing around with Savannah. That's
Hmm.
really never been for my experiences. And I know many couples I've spoken to, they love that female side to be in the bedroom with them and they love the play and they love the diversity of it. I love just exploring that space. But for me, typically with very traditional and not conservative, but traditionally, there's a man, there's a woman in relationship partners. And so Savannah's really not been active in intimacy, whether it's for as lighthearted as holding hands to sex. So from the gamut, I would say that holding hands and going out together and being almost, what would you call it? Sex in the City. We're all holding hands, walking down the street side by side and just hanging out. That's a yes. But in
Hmm.
terms of sex and passionate intimacy, no.
Sure. Okay. And does that cause you suffering? Do you feel like it's painful to have that part of you absent from your intimate life?
Say yes. And we're actually, even right now, we are in therapy, couples therapy, to try to strengthen all our bonds everywhere, not just the Savannah side. But the way I see it and the way I think of it is that I'm still the same person. I'm the same mind. I'm not Sybil where I have split personalities or
Sure. Yeah.
I wake up and say, oh my God, what did Savannah do last night? No, I don't have that. I'm the same person. I'm just presenting different. So for me, I would say there is suffering to some degree because I want my partner, and I've always wanted my partners to see me as just as amazing and lovable and smart and integrated as Chuck, as Savannah. So when Savannah is being left out, then it becomes like a rejection. And it's hard to compartmentalize the rejection for how my partner feels about Savannah versus how they feel about my male side. It's because where you reject this, but I'm supposed to be understanding that rejection is encapsulated only down here, down this alley, and everything else is fine,
Yeah.
but it still bleeds over. I'm a human being. I can't just compartmentalize that in that way because it's going to affect other parts of the
Sure.
relationship.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, and I want to make a clear distinction between pain and suffering, right? Pain is an inherent part of being a human, and suffering is like a biting back against that pain, right? So,
Mm.
not that I'm going to tell you what to do, right? I would struggle. Although it's called Ask Ezra, I'm trying really hard not to give advice here, but there may be an opportunity to share that pain, and then the suffering might dissolve because you're seen for your pain, right?
Yeah, and
So
that's
without.
what we're working through now is getting
Mhm.
just a better footing for all quote unquote partners in this relationship, all depending on how we appear and present and
Mhm.
act accordingly. So yeah, it's a journey. Like I said, don't get me wrong. This is not a here and now problem for me. This has been every relationship has been this dynamic. Unfortunately, in previous relationships, I wasn't strong enough to even voice my wants and needs. So
Mm.
I did suffer. It was painful. And that pain and suffering combined actually forced me to retreat even further back. And so not even Savannah as a sexual creature didn't have a voice, but Savannah as a human being didn't have a voice. And I just kept pushing her deeper and deeper in the closet because I'm a people pleaser. I'm a people pleaser, and I love to make sure everybody's comfortable, make sure everybody's happy, and don't make waves and hate confrontation. So I found myself doing a lot of mitigation and a lot of let's damage control everything to make sure everybody else is happy, and I'll just take the weight of unhappiness on.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. Saint Savannah.
Oh, please don't put that title on me.
I'm kidding. Okay. I want to talk for a second about your attraction to drag queens. So you had mentioned that early on in your discovery process, there was this attraction to men in drag. And I want to ask, when you were able to discover your own drag experience, your own bi-gender, dual gender experience, did that change, or does that persist, or how do you experience that?
I had to ask, I'm going to answer, but maybe I'm not answering correctly. When I saw and felt this attraction to, and it wasn't just drag queens, it was even just other transgender people that were at the club, and just seeing just them embody this femininity, that's very attractive.
Yeah.
Now, I had been dressing way before then.
Okay.
But that was during my heyday of me finally creating this head to toe persona and going out into the world. So I was in New York. I had come from the Midwest, and this was like year 2 of being in New York. So a lot of things, a lot of excuse me, a lot of things coming my way that I had not experienced before in real life. Oh, these people are real. Oh my God, that's a real person walking down the street. Like all those things were like, oh my God, this is out in public where people can see you. It's not just this underground, even though there obviously is an underground in some ways, but it was like put on Front Street. You could see it and like be like, wow, this is a whole different world than I was used to in the Midwest. So that being said, that helped me to evolve who I was to the version I started off with, head to toe. And then after that, going to the clubs is when I met and saw these people that I'm like, oh my God, they are so sexy, so gorgeous. But to the second part of your question, I knew I wasn't gay. I knew I wasn't attracted to the biological male. And that's where I struggled, because I couldn't distinguish between the, oh, look how sexy that girl at the bar is, to like, I want to take that girl home with me. And I couldn't differentiate between the cross the bar attraction and the like, what happens if I were to take that person home attraction? And like, and it took me years to realize, oh, it's just because they look that way that they're attractive, not because they have a penis. And that's what's attractive. It wasn't that. It was about the presentation of that book.
Yeah.
So it just took me. So while I never pursued that, it was more of a, it's been just, I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand it. And it took me years to finally be like, that's why the attraction was so strong. It had nothing to do with the, I love a man in drag. I just love the female that the drag is presenting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And I think so often we want to know why. And I think a lot of times that why either never comes or it's not satisfying. And I think that acceptance and knowing the reason why are two separate pursuits. And a lot of times I hear people say, I want to know why this is happening so I can decide whether I want to accept it or not. And I think that's a really dangerous road to walk, because you may never get the why, or you may get a why that's not satisfying. And acceptance is really going to help reduce suffering. So I think that's, to me, that's a priority, is accept it first. And then from that place of acceptance, you can investigate the cause if you still feel compelled. But a lot of times you figure out the cause and then the why just is not important anymore.
Yeah. And going down that analytical trail, like there was a while, maybe several months, that I was like, am I gay? I must be gay. But I'm not gay. I wasn't gay 10 minutes ago. And now all of a sudden I'm having these feelings, and I couldn't process or figure out the whys. And as a result, that was the kernel of confusion in mental dissent, that I was like, I don't get it. I know I'm not in my heart. If I really sit myself down and figure it out, I know I'm not. But why did I have that thought to begin with? So I didn't have a problem with the physicality part of it, of the actual relationship dynamics of it. It was more of like, why did I have that thought in the first place? What drove that thought? And that's me. And for me as a writer, as a creative, this is what drives me, this self-analysis. So I just could never put my finger on the pulse of it until a long time later. But once I did, I was like, oh my God, my second book has that as part of it.
Yeah.
That discovery was like, there's a sexual attraction and there's a romantic attraction. They are wholly separate things. And here's the reasons why. So I was able to get that analysis under my belt. I was able to find the causation of the thinking and feeling in the responses I was having. And it was fine.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't do that, but that's why I write books and that's why you have a podcast.
Yeah.
So we can have these conversations and somebody be like, oh my God, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And now it makes complete sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think for so many people, that romantic attraction and that sexual attraction overlap completely, and it's not complicated. Right. And so it can be confusing for people whose sexual attraction and romantic attraction does not overlap. And what's going on? Why doesn't it match? And again, let's work on acceptance first, and then maybe the why will come.
Well, unfortunately, acceptance is a hard road too, because to just take acceptance by faith that it's right, a lot of people don't believe in that. I feel it's right, so it must be right. We have too much dogma to tell us it's wrong, or tell us that we're out of the ordinary, so therefore there's something must be a little off about us. And that's why acceptance is so difficult to just say, I accept it on the basis of what it is.
Yeah. And there's always going to be people who are willing to reinforce this idea that sexuality, gender, if it doesn't fall in line, then it's a result of an illness, right? I'm not saying that's true, but there's always going to be people who are willing to say that's true. And so it can be really challenging to say that to yourself and then find out, oh, okay, there's a million hits on Google about my sexuality is an illness. I think it's worth restating that the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual held that homosexuality was an illness until 2003. And then even until 2013, consensual S&M practices was considered an illness.
Yeah.
It's really common to have that misunderstanding, right?
Yeah, and that's been the Bible that everybody puts their efforts to. Now we're at DSM-5, and suddenly being a transvestite is not an illness anymore. Is that being trans is not an illness unless these three things are present, which is really which ironically falls into more of a category of obsessive qualities, compulsion, self-harm, or harm to others. So for me sitting here with you today, there is nothing mentally ill about what I'm doing and who I am as a person. But yet I can walk out that door here in the South and be considered mentally ill because of how I present. Now, taking it one step further, there are some people, I do follow some people on Facebook who dress up as like a Lolita, like maid with like kind of a baby diaper kind of motif. And they're constantly posting about, I'm at my job, I'm waiting for my client. And they're taking pictures of themselves wearing this outfit. And I even have reservations, not about who they are as a person. I don't understand why they dress that way because I'm very binary.
Yeah.
Like you see me and I'm doing my best to look like the archetypical female. It's the best of my ability. But there are other people who take it to the androgynous area, take it to the just outrageous place, to this person who's, no, I just wearing this kind of sissy dress and go to work this way. And my first concern was, are they being saved? Is something going to is something bad going to befall them?
And yet, it's always a chance.
Yeah. And so that I know there's comfort levels for me, and other people are just breaking down those barriers wherever they go. Far beyond me.
Yeah. And I know that for a lot of people, a drag experience is a degrading experience, right? For, I think most people, it's an empowering experience, but there's some people who drag is part of degradation. And I think that's valid, but it can be really triggering for a lot of people because they're like, no, this is empowering for me and you're hurting our image. And it's like, politics aside, please do what you want to do in the bedroom. Don't let politics stop you. But yeah, there is being conscious.
Yeah, I just don't like the whole idea of I don't care what you do as long as you do it behind closed doors. I think that's a trap as well, because in reality, if they didn't put as long as you do it behind closed doors, that means that the first part of the statement of they do care what you do. They
Yeah,
just don't want
yeah.
to see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't care what your lifestyle is, as long as I don't have to interact with it at all. Is what
Right.
they're
As
saying,
long as I
right?
don't have to see it, hear it, come across it, it doesn't affect anybody in my family. As long as it's so hidden that I'd have to pull a boulder up to find it,
Yeah.
then I'm happy with that. That's
I
all
think
good.
I think there's another translation in there. I think, I don't care what you do as long as you're sufficiently ashamed. I've been
Mm.
ashamed of sex my whole life. You should be too.
Hey, I find I'm sure there's plenty of Catholics who are not gender diverse that have plenty of shame in them too. They don't need other problems
Yeah,
to go with
yeah.
it.
No, yeah, shame is not exclusive to any group. Yeah, that is
No.
pretty widespread. Shame and guilt. Yes, if you're experiencing shame and guilt, consider getting an intimacy coach. Visit AskEzra.info.
That's right. Luckily for me, shame and guilt have been a lower rung of my existence.
Yeah.
I think mine was more social acceptability and being triggered by invalidation. But otherwise, yeah, I've never been shameful of who I was, but other people have been shameful of who I was or who I am. And that I usually take on a lot more than I should. I take their shame on,
Yeah.
not my shame. I don't take it as I'm ashamed of me, but I feel bad that other people think I should be or they are ashamed of me.
Yeah, yeah. So here's a really tough question.
Please.
So you mentioned that your intimate life is not 100% fulfilling, and that's not necessarily like a problem that needs to be addressed. Like we go through life, and sometimes those things just never happen, and that's still a valid life, right? But what is getting in the way of your having that 100% fulfilling intimate life?
With everything, it's about the partnership. It's about what is comfortable and normalized and wanted and desired in a partnership. So, for instance, how many of us have heard stories of my wife got fat and she's not as pretty as she used to be? Ugh, I don't want that anymore. And I find that to be abhorrent because for me, I am in love with both that person's body and their spirituality and their passion and their mind. So you put on a couple LBs and all of a sudden I don't like you anymore or I'm not attracted to you. That says more about me as a person than it does about my partner. So I'm going to talk in abstracts now because I think it's more important to talk about abstracts. So if you have a normalized sense of what you expect in your partnership, like I am a woman and I wanted that big wedding and the house with a picket fence and the 2.5 kids and the dogs. And all of a sudden you're thrown into this whole different world that you've never been comfortable with or even knowledgeable about. That affects how you see that partnership. Unless you can really overcome your own, I don't want to say limitations, just those presets, the presets you grew up with that you expected. And some people, even more, especially in my community, when there's a partnership, you have a very lovely male-female relationship. Everything's fine. You have the sex whenever it comes up. And yes, we know the longer the relationship, sometimes the sexual calendar dips a little. And yes, we know that's typical and we should keep those fires burning. But imagine you're married and your husband of 20 years says, oh, yeah, by the way, I got something to tell you. I also have this female persona. And it will start checking a myriad of things that are problematic relationship wise. But think about a woman who married a man, spent 20 years, has 2 grown kids, they're empty nesters, and now you want that woman to be attracted to for lack of a better word, a woman. Like you want that person to be attracted to you dressed as a woman. So now they have to have not necessarily, it's not lesbian tendencies, and that's been overused, but you want them to find what they are attracted to, sexually attracted to, that person across the bar. You want them to completely shift what they see as attractive and desirable just because it's you. And that, I think, is a linchpin for that hurdle of what needs to be strode over. Now, the question is, can you get there? I don't know. A lot of people may dive headfirst into it and say, oh my God, this is great. Let's all dress up together. Let's all get pink dress. We'll do a Barbie night. Some people like embrace it fully. And some people, that's just not where they want to be in a relationship. So at that point, you have to figure out different methodology of, do you get there? Do you not get there? Do you acknowledge the female partner that you have now in different ways? Oh, let's go out. We'll go get our nails done. We'll go to dinner together. We'll go shopping. Like, other intimate experiences are not necessarily fulfilled sexually, but it's still intimate, or still can be intimate. And then leave the sexual intimacy to the male-female dynamic of that triad, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point to make, that not all intimacy is sexual. And I think being seen, being appreciated is a huge component to intimacy. So
great.
Yeah. And I think you're entirely right too, that people change, right? And expecting a partner to change the same way, or expecting a partner to appreciate the change that you're going through, might be ill-fated, right? We may not all be so lucky that our partner is like secretly wanting that, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's again, I've seen it lots of times where people struggle with it, never come through the other side. Like I said, they're very ill-fated in the I want to be this way, and they struggle to be that way and realize it's just not their genetic makeup to see their husband in that way. But then other ones, like I said, I've had other ones where the female partner was like, I want to do this thing, but my cross-dressing partner is hesitant because they've been burned so many times. So I've seen it where the woman's all in and the guy's, I don't know, this seems a little sketchy because I've never seen this before in my life. And they're hesitant to have faith and accept that this is what their partner wants to do with them. So I've seen like all the different ways that this can go down, and sometimes it works out great, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you just make that compromise and bump up to that comfort limit, and you share that way and keep things burning in the male-female dynamic. So yeah, it can go 1,000 different ways, and my story is just one of many.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in our last episode together, we talked about fear being sometimes real, sometimes exaggerated, and sometimes imagined. And I think it can be really terrifying to bring these really deep-held beliefs and experiences to a partner, and you're really invested in that relationship. And I think it would be foolish to imagine that there is no risk to the relationship. I think ideally it's a small risk, but it's a risk, right? That partner may never be able to see you the same way. I think the reward can be tremendous, right? Because perhaps they can see you that way, and you can, have that really fulfilling life. But in the end, there's a value to the relationship, and it's a value that the two of you can really figure out.
Yeah,
and
you have to
nobody
navigate
else.
it. Yeah, you have to navigate it. I've had people tell me that, oh my God, since my husband came out to me, our sex life is so much better. Now, I didn't dig in to say which part of the sex life. Was it like you with her or you with him? I didn't ask, but they were very excited because they were talking about their husband as this female persona, and said that everything has just been so much more intense. And I think like you said, the risk reward. What's the reward? The reward is you're with a partner who feels completely seen, like you said. They feel safe. They feel they can express themselves in a way different than they were hesitant to before. And of course, they're going to bring that to the partnership with you. If you are there with open arms saying, come to me, baby, let's be together on this, you're going to find the intimate and emotional dynamic is going to be heightened. And you're going to find something in your partner that you didn't see or expect before because they were always holding back in some way. You just weren't aware.
Absolutely. And I want to highlight like a possible success story that doesn't require a significant change in the intimate experience, right? We talked about how just being seen and being heard and being acknowledged can be really intimate. And that partner can feel really afraid of being discovered. And just being seen, like you could have a partner who just is, can I talk to you about this? And you get a chance to talk about it. And now all of a sudden that person is not afraid anymore. And let me tell you, fear is a total boner killer, right?
Yes.
So like the sex life hasn't changed, but because that person feels seen and heard, all of a sudden there actually is a change in the sex life because that person's no longer afraid or no longer ashamed or
Right. Or
anything
has that
like that.
anxiety. You talk about fear leads to anxiety. Anxiety leads to all the wrong chemicals of the brain, which then starts suppressing your sex drive and libido.
Yeah.
It is a vicious cascade of things when you start from a place of fear and anxiety and stress.
I know I said I wasn't going to give any advice, okay? And I'm not giving advice to you, but what I'd like to do is give the sort of one size fits all advice for people who want to come out to their partner, people who want to disclose this thing that they're afraid of. And I see it a lot in fetish education. A lot of times people will have these fetishes and they're like, I don't know if I can talk to my partner. And something that happens really often is this like dam break phenomenon where you've been holding it back for so long. And when you finally let it out, you just let everything out all at once. And that partner gets really overwhelmed and frightened. And it doesn't go well because they're like, I don't want to talk about it because the last time we talked about it, it lasted 4 hours and I was frightened. Less is more. Start low, go slow. So if this is your experience, remember what you're asking of your partner. Be super clear about it. Ask as little as you can. Really go slow. Start with as little as possible. Maybe say, hey, can we talk about this for 5 minutes? And you introduce the topic in 5 minutes and they have a decent experience and they're going to be more willing to come back to the table and you could do 10 minutes next time.
It's funny you say that because that dam break phenomenon is very prevalent, especially with coming out as a transvestite or crossdresser or dual gender, however you want to apply that to yourself, where the dam breaks in whether the conversation goes good or ill. It's a big moment because that person at least has been holding it for so long. And what tends to happen is it becomes the crux of every conversation you want to have. Like you can't go any conversation without bringing up. There was a time where our girlfriend and I would talk. It's just, is this all we're ever going to talk about? Are we ever going to talk about anything else? And it's because there's a sense of closure you're looking for. And not closure in terms of the relationship, but closure in terms of maybe it's just a level of acceptance or really knowing what your partner is feeling so that you can say, okay, I can take your answer. I can take what you've told me and I can now process that myself. Otherwise, we get very cagey emotionally and actually physically. We get cagey because we just, oh my God, we just let it all out. And now we're just in this just waiting game as they're going through the stages of grief about the person they thought you were versus the person you are. And what does that mean for them? And is my husband going to transition? And all that fear that just like blows up on them. And you're just sitting here in the background, just pacing back and forth, waiting for another moment to jump in and have a productive conversation.
Yeah.
Because that's what you want from it. You want us to bring us together. But what happens is you're not understanding what they're going through that they may not be sharing with you.
Yeah.
Because they got to do that internal work to be able to come back to the table and be like, okay, like you said, divvy it up into like little breakout sessions. And then just don't make it like, oh my God, I'm exhausted from the 12 hours we just spoke about this on our trip to Idaho to go see my parents for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Don't start a conversation in the beginning of a 12-hour drive. Don't do that.
It could get very quiet and awkward for about 8 hours, I tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot to process, right? And if this is something you've been holding on to for years, you've had a lot of time to process it. And this may be the first time they're hearing about it. And they go, yeah, like you said, they've got all these questions. They've got all these worries, fears, insecurities that can come up. And they need time to process things too. And so you want to be patient with your partner. Imagine if you were introducing a hobby, right? Could say, I don't know why archery comes to mind, but let's say you just fucking love archery and you're afraid that your partner is going to be ashamed of you or have prejudice against archers or whatever. It sounds silly when we say it this way, but if you've been desperately passionate about archery for your whole life and you felt like you needed to keep a secret, Now you might just want to talk about archery all the time, and that person has to really make their own choice about whether archery is for them or not. And it's going to take some time.
I think you got it right in the bullseye. Just
Yeah.
to keep the analogy going, I'm going to give you two hobbies that I think are more fitting.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
I'm a Lego nerd. I love
Awesome.
Lego. And as we in that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, being an adult that loved Lego was something your partner would be like, dude, I am getting away from this man. He is a weirdo. He has a basement full of Lego toys. But now it's become vogue. It's become the in thing to be a Lego nerd. Now there's shows about Lego building competitions where you're like, oh my God, this is really a creative outlet. But yet the poor bastardized a cousin of this phenomena is those people who have those massive dioramas, train sets, Lionel train sets in their basements with like things they have to undo to get all the parts apart with the tunnels. That's one of those things that a partner will be like, yeah, that's great. I'm glad you're really putting effort into that in the basement. How do you get that out of here? So even that is that hobby that people just can't necessarily understand why you have an affinity for it. Versus
Yeah.
now, people who love Lego, yeah, I get it. There's 4,000 Lego stores. There's stuff online. There's movies. It's like, I get it. I got a bonsai tree because that speaks to me. As I'll get the floral botanicals because that's more for the girl. So it's just that funny thing where it's like they can either get right on board with it because it's now the thing that's cool to be,
Yeah.
versus that, like you said, that private thing was like, yeah, archery. Okay. All right, great.
Yeah. Okay. No, I get it. And I think that's better because you can understand the shame a little bit better. Like
Yes.
you could
Archery's
like,
kind of badass, if
it
you
is.
ask me.
Archery's really cool. But yeah, if your entire basement is like a detailed train landscape,
Yes.
it's been a secret. Now, if you're discovering this from if your partner is disclosing this, it can be like, share it, right? But the question is, are you asking your partner to observe your train set and go, wow, that's really cool? Or I see that, I can see why you'd like it. Or are you asking your partner to go sit in the basement with you for hours and watch the train go back around and paint little figurines? It's a different ask, and
Yes, exactly.
it's easy when you're really passionate about something and really excited about something to feel like everyone should also be excited. You don't want to pressure somebody into it. Imagine your pleasure is making this massive train diorama and everything, and now you've got a partner next to you who's painting figurines but hating it. You don't want that. You really
Right.
don't. So find out what makes sense and temperature check. Find out. You might say, what do you feel about model trains in general?
Yeah.
Get a sense of how they feel about it before you disclose.
That's always true. It's always good to get a barometer gauge.
Yeah.
But if they decide to move in, there's only going to be so much time before they discover it on their own, which this analogy works in so many ways, actually, to my life, because it's like you're hiding, don't ever go in the basement. What do you got, dead bodies in the basement? No, just stay out of the basement. And then all of a sudden they discover your train set. And in my case, discovering my Rubbermaid bid full of wigs and heels.
No, you say yes. You say yes to the dead bodies because it's better than the truth.
In some cases, yeah. I've heard that story too, where my husband said he wanted to tell me something. And the things that flashed through my mind were he has cancer. He lost his job. We're going to lose the house, blah, blah, blah. I never would have expected I'm dual gender. So it's definitely not in the upper echelon of expected responses. Yeah, I hear you. And again, getting back to the sexuality component, I love what you're saying about the person painting figures next to you and hating it, and they're resenting you. So what I want to do is give a positive spin on that, which is in some cases being seen and validated and heard and feeling loved could be as simple as like this chain that I have. It's a Phoenix. My girlfriend gave me this Phoenix 4 years ago, I believe, for Christmas, and I wear this always when I'm Savannah. This is like that validating moment that she provided just by giving me a gift. It didn't put her on the inside of my Savannah experience, feminized experience, but it was something she could share with me or gift me as a token of appreciation and love for the person she knows I am.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I like to come back to the train analogy. I swear I'll put it down. But imagine going back down to your basement train set and just knowing that you're not at risk of being discovered and just being able to do it without being afraid, right?
Mm.
Sometimes that's all we really want from our partners is to know that what we do is okay.
Yeah. And that there's nothing wrong with being a Lionel Train aficionado. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no shame attached to it. It's just what we've been told that we should do.
Yeah, absolutely. What if the trains are all sculpty clayed to be dicks?
That's a whole different conversation. And you might have the corner of a market if every caboose is like dildo shaped on wheels.
No, I'm sorry, Savannah, but the engine is penis shaped and the caboose is got a butt on it.
Oh, come on. We've got Thomas the Train engines. They have faces on them at least. Anything is possible.
Yes, if there's any fans that watch this show that are animators, please make the most disturbing image possible and share it with me.
You just want to see that the collision of the front of the train into the back of the train.
No, I want to see maybe like Butt Mountain and like the tunnel through Butt Mountain, right?
Plus with the Z though, right? You gotta have a Z.
I
Two
guess.
T's and a Z.
Yeah.
We'll keep working.
Is that to get underneath the censorship issue? Is that it? Yeah, you're thinking. You're thinking. Oh, that's why I like having you on this show, right?
I'll go into whatever direction you want me to go.
Oh, watch what you offer me. Okay.
Oops.
This has been such a pleasure, and I'm not sure there's anywhere to go from Butt Mountain. I think we should probably cap it here, but absolutely lovely having you, Savannah. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you so much for having me. I love our time together. It's always great. Puts a smile on my face.
Fantastic. Awesome. And how about this? If you want to see the smile on Savannah's face, you have to go to my Patreon, where the video will be, because we are now audio only.
Thanks for watching the Ask Ezra Intimacy Coaching Podcast. Support our show at patreon.com/AskEzra. Join us at the personal growth tier and receive a special thank you on the next podcast episode. A very special thank you to both Sarah Nash and Deb Matson for being Patreon supporters at the personal growth tier and helping make the Ask Ezra Intimacy Coaching Podcast possible.